Tonight, Civil Society, Catholic Bishops' Conference, the NCCE, and the main opposition NDC punch significant holes into what the NDC is describing as a badly flawed anti-vigilantism legislation.
It's premature. Not the NDC, even everybody say you are rushing. It's a rush. If you want to show political will, deal immediately with Ayawaso West Wabon.
The governing MPP appears to be standing alone in seeing nothing wrong with the bill as Parliament's Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee hosts public forum to get inputs to finalize the bill.
But it should not be a case where before even this vigilantism bill or act comes into force, you have to first of all prosecute the perpetrators of the Ayawaso West. We are not sure, and the NPP is not sure. In any case, the NPP did not clash with the NDC at Ayawaso West.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Gasem the nation. Builder Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready. And Nationwide Medical Health Insurance. Your healthcare family. After weeks of waiting, many interested parties today finally got an opportunity to contribute to the controversial draft anti-vigilantism bill. In the end, only the governing MPP was left standing alone, as it was the only party that saw nothing wrong with the draft bill. The Catholic Bishops' Conference, the NCCE, Civil Society, and the main opposition NDC punched significant holes into the bill, onto the draft bill. Now, in fact, for the NDC, the bill is unnecessary and a deliberate diversion to allow the MPP, as they allege, to continue to build up its militia infrastructure ahead of the 2020 elections. We'll hear from the other key stakeholders who appeared before the committee today to submit their memoranda. My colleague Elton Brobe has a copy of the NDC's memoranda that they submitted to the committee and has details of this. Elton, what is the NDC's position?
So, Evans, the opening remarks says that there are significant technical problems with the bill. They are saying that if we are invited to testify before the Honorable Committee and time allows, we will speak to these more technical issues. However, at this stage, we think it is more important to speak to fundamental, conceptual, and policy issues that completely undermine the bill as a response to the crisis of political violence in our society, Evans.
Now, they go on to state their key fundamental issues, and as they've talked about the policy issues, they say that as far as they're concerned, the bill misdirects Parliament and the nation by incorrectly characterizing the problem.
Right.
And they quote Henrietta Mensah Bongsu from the Ayawaso West Wagon by-election commission that vigilantism, as they say, is the country does not have a crisis of vigilantism, and that vigilantism occurs when groups engage in law enforcement and crime prevention without proper legal authority. That is not the situation the NDC believe. That is not the situation that we are confronting in Ghana. They prefer to use the term malicious.
Right.
And you see that seems to recur in many of the positions that have been expressed today, including the position of the Catholic Bishops' Conference. What else is the NDC saying?
They are saying that the current bill and its accompanying memorandum demonstrate no effort on the part of government to understand the problems at stake. And indeed, they've looked at the clauses in the bill, they've asked the questions in their own memorandum to Parliament, and they have provided answers as to why they think that the bill lacks the needed bite to deal with the issues that we have at hand. And according to them, as demonstrated, the bill mischaracterize the issues and will not provide enduring solution to the problems of unlawful militia. What the public clearly expect of government and the entire political establishment is concrete and coordinated answers to specific questions as follows. How do we get rid of illegal armed militias employing violence to impose private interests and agenda on the rest of society in partisan politics, natural resource dispute, chieftaincy disputes, institutional disputes, etc. 2. How do we end partisan political interference in the command structure and operations of our security agencies? 3. How do we end infiltration by the government of the day of unsuitable and inadequate trained partisan agents into security agencies? And how do we remove such unqualified and inadequately trained partisan personnel from our armed forces? For the NDC, the bill does not begin to answer any of these questions and has therefore failed to advance the national agenda.
And their fundamental point is that there is existing legislation, including what they point out there's a Criminal Offences Act,
Right.
Section 200, that says adequately addresses this. In fact, it is their submission before the committee today that particular section addresses concerns about the operation of armed militias. And note the nomenclature they're using. They're calling it armed militias, not vigilantes.
Right.
In fact, the Catholic Bishops' Conference raised fundamental issues with the couching itself, the name vigilantes, and which the bill seems to carry. The NDC says that if you look at the existing legislation, it deals with this threat far more comprehensively, more effectively than the bill does, and, quote, robs the bill of any value. Now, they also go on to detail, these concerns that they have, and other key issues as well, Elting.
Right, of course. And they provided a cure as far as they are concerned. And they have the view that Ghana can wait a few more months for a real workable solution. Now, if the government wishes to demonstrate commitments, as it should initiate the investigation, arrest, and competent prosecution of those against whom specific allegations of political violence backed by evidence have been made, including names. And it goes on to say that it is difficult to avoid the conclusion that the bill rather serves to distract the attention of civil society and the diplomatic community, allowing the MPP to continue to build up of its militia infrastructure and the infiltration of its tax deeper and deeper into the national security apparatus in preparation for the 2020 general elections and beyond.
And there is something to say about the work that the Attorney General had done. And the Attorney General was part of the forum today. And they claim that it appears to the NDC that the AG's department has not done, quote, a thorough job of reviewing and realigning existing legislation in a manner that enhances rather than confuses our laws, or that the political authority has overruled the professional advice from the department. Well, that is your position as far as the AG's work is concerned. Now, if you read the conclusion, Elting, they make a strong case why this law is unnecessary.
Of course, and for them, this is an attempt by a desperate government to win re-election, because according to them, neither the president, a seasoned legal practitioner, and the former AG, nor his legal advisors did any actual research before publicly committing to a legislative solution. The result is that the government is now trapped in legislative theatre, compelled to use its parliamentary majority to push through unnecessary and badly flawed legislation, Evans.
Now, if you pay attention to the other groups that presented positions on this matter before the committee, one thread emerges, which is that there is unanimity among, say, civil society, but also NCCE, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the CPP, and others, that the law has flaws. And if you listen to the civil society groups, for example, and their position was articulated by Madam Angela Dramana-Boaji, the Civil Society Initiative Forum, and they had presented a position. Some of the key things they had mentioned are positions that were articulated by the NDC, including the NDC's suspicion that some party elements have infiltrated national security, and that must be dealt with, but also the inclusion of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election Commission of Inquiry report as a basis for, formulating any legislation. Listen to Angela Dramana-Boaji.
The issue of vigilante members who find their way into the national security network, as it emerged from the live broadcast of the Emile Short Commission, has not been factored into the bill. This is considered a huge gap in the proposed law. 4. The Emile Short Commission's report should have influenced the contents of the bill. Therefore, publication of the full report and passage of a white paper on the report should have preceded the laying of the bill. 5. The publication of the bill has generated great public interest and debate, the sum total of which the bill can benefit from. Additionally, the meeting of the two political parties under the auspices of the National Peace Council may also yield other areas which again may be of benefit to the bill.
So that is Angela Dramana-Boaji, speaks for civil society. They had come together under one umbrella and had presented their position today, which was just articulated. 3 issues that they presented today, all aligned with the position of the NDC. Another group that also presented a position today, again aligning with a lot of the things that the NDC had also articulated in the memoranda, is that of the NCC. Parker was there. Parker, the NCC also seemed to adopt a position today before the committee, same as what the NDC had said.
Right. Now, the position of the NCC is clear, that the report of the Emil-Short Commission should influence the content of this bill that we all anticipate. She believes, the boss of the NCCE, that is Madam Josephine Nkrumah, she believes that, in fact, this report will rather help shape the bill so that there will be a proper roadmap going forward as to how to deal with a threat of party militia.
But I'm hoping that the views that were expressed at today's stakeholder engagement would open their minds to suggestions that perhaps we need to take a step back and look at this holistically. We need to see the publication of the Emil-Short Commission's report is pertinent to vigilantism. We need to see the consultations going on between the National Peace Council and all the other political parties. It's pertinent to the issue of vigilantism. The NCC report, it's pertinent to vigilantism. All of these things are crucial documents or crucial engagements that must necessarily enrich the engagement, the discussion on this as a bill.
So if I understand, you need to get to the bottom of all the concerns you've raised, even before we proceed with the bill.
I think so, because if not, yes, at least we should have a roadmap.
So that is the head of the NCCE. Now, the National Peace Council also presented a paper before Parliament today, the committee working on the bill. Remember that the Peace Council's submission is very crucial, because they are already in the process of mediating a conversation on disbanding party militias, and they've been dealing with the NDC and NPP for some time. They've had at least 2 meetings already, and their position is a very strong one. And it starts by stating, and this is the submission they make to the committee, and it's under the hand Nana SKB Asante, member of the National Peace Council, and it says fundamentally, again to the point that the NDC is making about why the bill has the title vigilantism, and it says, I am utterly dismayed at the definition of vigilantism in the above bill, and it says it looks as if the draftman is struggling to fit the ordinary meaning of vigilantism, which has the element of law enforcement, into an essentially unlawful phenomenon. They end by saying, if the use of the term vigilantism compels this thoroughly misconceived drafting, and so that's their view there, as far as they're concerned, the draft bill is thoroughly misconceived, then perhaps, and this is a quote, then perhaps another term should be used which does not have the literal connotation of law enforcement. But the thing is, Parker was there. Did they offer us an alternative to the word vigilantism, which the bill uses?
No, many were expecting that they would do that, but the National Peace Council failed to do that. But as you mentioned, the point was clear that they believe that vigilantism does not really connote, the activities of these vigilante boys does not connote the true meaning or the dictionary definition, and so they would want the name amended. Something different, but they didn't propose any name for the bill.
Listen to how they end the document, the memorandum. They say, it is my respectful submission, that is the Peace Council's, as presented by SKB Asante, that the bill, that as the bill stands, the objectives of the legislation will be defeated. Right. Same as the NDC's position, that they believe the bill is badly flawed, the word they use. We've heard civil society say there's serious gaps in this that must be addressed even before we go forward. We'll hear from the NPP. The NPP has a totally different position to all the voices that we heard today. They seem to be standing alone, believing there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I'll bring you what Samir Uku has been saying shortly, but I want to bring in the chair of the committee, Ben Abdallah, joins us. Hello, Mr. Abdallah. Thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners.
I have a whole mounting of documents in front of me here, documents that I'm sure has now been formally presented to you from the NCCE, from Catholic Bishops' Conference, from civil society. And I see one common theme running through it. All of them believe there are fundamental flaws in the draft bill you're considering. And some of the key similarities, and NDC raises it runs through. One, that the Ayawaso West Wagon Commission report must be published and must form a basis for considering the bill. Two, that those who have infiltrated the security agencies must be looked at. There must be a means to addressing that in the bill. Three, that the conversation that the parties are having with the Peace Council should also influence your work. And then one key point that also is coming, NDC raised it, Peace Council is raising it, is the use of vigilantism, which seemed to be an issue for a lot of the people that came before you today. How are you reading into all this as you've already had it?
Evans, thank you very much. And once again, let me say good evening to all your listeners. The first three points that you raised, much as they are legitimate, are not part of our terms of reference. The issue of violence that was allegedly perpetrated in the recent by-election, as a result of which the Commission of Inquiry was set up, will have to be dealt with separately and should not be mixed with the work of the committee. But I think that what is relevant to the work of the committee is the last point that you raised, whether the title of the bill, which is Vigilantism and Related Offences Bill, should be maintained. Is it proper? Is it appropriate? Does it fit well with the ordinary meaning of the word vigilantism? I have said it several times with that number that I don't have any particular fixation about whether we should change the title of the bill or not. What matters is what is in the bill itself, the substance of the bill. And you see, when you use a word within a bill or within a law, and that word doesn't have, or you don't want to give the word its ordinary meaning, what you need to do is to define the word in the interpretation section. And the word vigilantism, given the fact that its meaning is not the same as what is in the bill, has been given an interpretation or a definition within the law. So I, honestly speaking, don't have any entrenched position about it. But whatever the committee will decide, and ultimately members of parliament will decide, is what is going to hold sway. And I want us to take note is the fact that this bill is not a final. It's not the law itself. It's a sort of proposal that has been brought to Parliament, and it is against this backdrop that today we did the stakeholder engagement or conference. The reason is that we needed to solicit views from the public, what their views are about the character of the bill, if you like, the title of the bill, and the provisions or the substance of the bill. And I think that today's stakeholder conference or engagement has been very, very fruitful, has been very, very, insightful. A lot of points, have been raised. A lot of amendments have been proffered. And I think that when the committee meets tomorrow to discuss or explore the span of the bill, all these issues will be raised and discussed. So whatever amendments that we think are legitimate and relevant to the discussions of the bill on the floor of Parliament when Parliament resumes, and we will take all those issues on board.
Now, one of the fundamental issues that I see also appear to be running through a lot of the positions expressed today is that the Parliament, if the NDC makes the direct call on Parliament to put pressure on the government to publish the Emil Short Commission reports, because that they believe, and the civil society expressed that as well, they believe will greatly assist your work in putting before the plenary a bill fit for purpose. What do you say to that?
Yes, that point, much as is legitimate, the work of the committee cannot await the report from the Milshot Commission. Our work has to progress. At any point in time, before passage of the bill, that the report will be made available to us, we will be inclined to examine the report and see whether there are any points of relevancy that we can incorporate into the bill. I mean, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that the report of the Milshot Commission, much as it is legitimate, should not be a basis or a precondition for the progression of the work of the committee. The work of the committee must go on. And Parliament, the Constitution, has a time frame within which to pass a bill that has been brought to Parliament into a law, and we have to work within that constitutional time limitation period.
And so what happens now? Now you have all the documents you need. Is it now closed to further memoranda? If you had missed today's window, that's it. And what happens now before Parliament resumes next week?
I think that even at the stakeholder conference, I did indicate that the doors of Parliament are not shut to the receipt of memoranda from the public. The only time that Parliament will be incapable, if you like, jurisdictionally disabled from receiving memoranda is when the bill has crystallized into a law. That is when the third reading of the bill has been made. So from this time up to the time that Parliament resumes on the 8th, from that time up to the time that the bill receives the third reading, that is when it's become a law. Every person who is interested in bringing a memorandum or memoranda is permitted to do so.
I'm grateful that you joined us as the chairman of the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee, opening the doors today for input into the bill. I want you to now listen to the national organizer of the NPP, Samuel Wuku, who will be speaking to my colleague Parker Wilson after the forum today, and he addresses some of the fundamental issues raised by the NDC and others in their memoranda.
We all agree that we have incidents in the past that has contributed to this phenomenon. And we're saying that if the NDC considers the Ayawaso West Ogun as the lowest hanging fruit, the NPP also does consider Talensi as the lowest hanging fruit.
No, but Ayawaso is immediate. It's this year.
Because it happened in Accra. Ghana is not only Accra. In Talensi, people were maimed. I can tell you, national officers of our party today who have a medical condition because of what happened in Talents. But that is not to justify the violence at the Ayawaso West Ogun. And one thing must also be clear. In Talents, in Chereponi, in Etiwa, in Akwetia, in Amenfi West, you had groupings associated with the two major political parties clashing. In Ayawaso West, there was an incident of the security agencies clashing with a group operating for and on behalf of the NDC. So, if you consider, if you want to marry the two, you have a difficulty. Where crime has been perpetrated, let us not color crime. And crime has no expiry date, unlike other consumables. So if it happened under this regime and we have the evidence and we can prosecute, let's encourage the prosecutors to do their work. Where you cannot have the evidence and you think you are only going to go on fishing, then it becomes another matter.
So do you think that we should go back and investigate all those crimes, including Ayawaso, before? I
don't have a problem at all. But you see, that should not even be a precondition. The investigations can go. But then this process of also ensuring that we nip this issue in the bud must also continue. But it should not be a case where, before even this vigilantism bill or act comes into force, you have to first of all prosecute the perpetrators of the Ayawaso West. We are not sure, and the NPP is not sure. In any case, the NPP did not clash with the NDC at Ayawaso West. The NDC clashed with the state security,
which has been alleged that they are members of the NPP,
and which we
are vigilante groups of the NPP,
which we have flatly denied. Because the very people that they are saying that they saw them, they were not even there. The young men that they have pointed at has been also clearly demonstrated that they operate for the national security, and so I find it a bit outrageous.
So that's the national organizer of the NPP there. On the line with me right now is the communications director for the opposition NDC, Mr. Kakra Asama. Mr. Asama, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much. So
just before we hear Samir Wuku, I've been speaking with the chairman of the committee that you presented your memorandum to, and he says a lot of the concerns you've raised in your points you've touched on does not fall within their terms of reference, and so unfortunately cannot do much with it apart from what he says is the concerns you've raised about the terminology vigilantism. What's your reaction to that?
Indeed, I actually asked him the same question at the forum. I asked whether, in view of all the views that had been expressed there about the bill, he had authority to extend the period within which they will consider the bill so that we have a much longer time so that many more people can bring in their views. And he said he had no such authority. So that question was answered at the forum. And I understand what he's saying. A bill has been brought to him and he has to go through a certain procedure. He's going through that. That is the fact that people disagree with it and that they have input that may be of use is only important if it can be incorporated into what he's doing. If not, that is it.
In your memo, you allege that this bill, quote, rather serves to distract the attention of civil society and the diplomatic community, allowing the NPP to continue the build-up of its militia infrastructure and the infiltration of its thugs deeper and deeper into national security. Such an allegation. Where's the evidence?
I was fairly surprised. There are quite a number of civil society organizations that participated in the forum, shared some of the points we raised over there. For example, and many of them did share our view that it is crucial and imperative that the contents of the report and recommendations of the Initial Commission of Inquiry should be made public, and that those contents will certainly aid in fashioning out a suitable legislation to deal with the issue of vigilantism. That is not all. Others also shared our view that the dialogue that we are having with the NPP and other stakeholders, which is being moderated by the National Peace Council, which will continue at PBRC on Monday, also ought to come to an end so that what comes out of that dialogue will be incorporated into the bill. All this is something that, in my opinion, and I believe in the opinion of reasonable Ghanaians, must be something that should be of importance to those who are tabling the bill before Parliament.
Is that what justifies the allegation that the bill itself is to distract from an employ to...
Because the bill as it stands, from the viewpoint that you may have come across, the bill as it stands is inadequate. It is premature, and it is wrongly structured.
Yeah, but I don't know if but it doesn't address the question I asked and the allegation you've made in the report that there is just a part of a scheme so we can divert our attention while the party infiltrates the ranks of official state security with thugs.
Yes, that is what we know.
You know how? With what evidence?
What we know. Look, fortunately, the sittings of the Initial Commission of Inquiry were televised and broadcast. We saw and we heard everything. Those elements in the national security who attacked the voters in Ayawaso West Wogon, are they the usual elements of the police or the army that you see in town? When the police are going on an operation, do they put on masks? When the police are going on operation, do they wear those brown uniforms? These are things that you and I saw. It's not something that we are creating.
And definitely this conversation, from what I hear, will continue. So, Mr. Asama, I'm grateful that you joined us as the conversation continues into how to make this draft bill finer than it is currently before the Legislative Committee in Parliament.
we want you to know that if you don't disband private criminal militia groups, we will not vote for you because we are scared.
The time has come for us as a political class to say that this development is not good for the future of this country.
The NPP has been guilty, the NDC has been guilty in terms of these groups. And so both the NDC and the NPP will have to find a way of engaging the base of our parties.